Okay, so the Great Resignation, right? It's everywhere you turn. Headlines, social media, you probably hear it at the water cooler.
Everyone's talking about it.
Exactly. But are we really understanding what's going on beneath the surface? That's what we're digging into today. We've got research, data, the whole shebang.
It's more than just a catchy phrase, that's for sure.
Way more.
Yeah.
And honestly, some of the stuff we found while prepping for this deep dive,
Yeah.
even I was surprised.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, everyone assumes it's all about tech workers bouncing between Silicon Valley giants, yeah.
Right. Makes sense.
But get this, the industry with the biggest jump in resignations, leisure and hospitality.
No way, seriously.
Yep, 204% increase. 204. So clearly something else is going on there, something big.
Wow. Yeah, that's wild. Okay, so where do we even begin? I mean, the pandemic obviously plays a role, right?
Totally. It's like the pandemic was the earthquake, but the cracks in the foundation were already there, you know?
A catalyst. It brought things to a head.
Exactly. So what were those cracks? What were people already feeling that the pandemic just blew wide open?
Well, one of the biggest things that comes up again and again in this research is this need for flexibility. And no, I don't just mean wanting to work in your PJs.
Although, come on, that's a nice perk.
Sure, sure. But it's more about control. Control over your schedule, your work environment, your life outside of work. The pandemic proved that remote work is doable for a lot of industries. And once people saw that, it's like this switch flipped.
They realized they had options.
Exactly. And that the old 9-to-5 grind, chained to a desk, it's not the only way. Especially if you've got kids or elderly parents or you just want to, actually live your life.
It's about priorities.
Yeah.
One article even called it a recalibration of what people value most.
And right alongside that, you can't ignore the mental health piece. Burnout is real.
That 204% jump in those service industry resignations, a lot of it ties back to just brutal working conditions, made even worse by the pandemic.
Think about it. You're in a restaurant, short-staffed, dealing with constantly changing rules, worried about getting sick yourself. It's no wonder people hit a breaking point.
It really makes you appreciate the folks who kept showing up during that time.
Absolutely. And the research shows it wasn't just the physical demands either. Healthcare workers, for example, they face this huge wave of what's called moral injury.
Moral injury. I'm not familiar with that.
So it's this intense psychological distress that happens when you're put in situations where you have to act against your values or you witness things that go against your moral code. Doctors having to make impossible decisions about who gets care because of limited resources. Nurses seeing preventable deaths because of staffing shortages. That takes a huge toll.
That's heavy stuff. And it adds a whole other layer to the conversation about burnout and why people leave these professions.
Totally. But look, even with all of that, people still need to pay the bills, right?
Of course, money matters.
It does. But what's really interesting is that the research suggests it's often less about the actual number on your paycheck and more about feeling valued for the work you do.
So it's not just about the money. It's about what that money represents.
Exactly. It's about feeling respected, appreciated, like your contributions actually matter. Like you're being compensated fairly compared to your peers, given opportunities to grow. And that goes hand in hand with the whole idea of career satisfaction and finding work that feels meaningful.
People wanting to feel challenged, engaged, like their work has a purpose, not just going through the motion.
Right. And if they don't feel that, well, as the Great Resignation has shown us, they're not afraid to walk away and find it elsewhere.
So we've talked about these big picture reasons behind the Great Resignation, but let's get granular. Which industries have really been rocked by this?
Well, we got to circle back to leisure and hospitality, right? That 204% jump in resignations, that's not just a blip on the radar.
It's seismic. What's the deal there? Why are people leaving those jobs in droves?
The research paints a pretty clear picture, honestly. Low wages, rough hours, not a lot of room to move up. These were already pain points. The pandemic just threw gasoline on the fire.
And these were the folks keeping things running for the rest of us during those early, uncertain times, serving us food, keeping the lights on at hotels.
Essential workers, many of them. And the fact that so many felt undervalued, underpaid.
Makes you think, if those support systems had been stronger all along,
would we be seeing this mass exodus? Tough to say for sure, but it definitely raises some important questions about how we treat those essential workers, not just during a crisis.
No doubt. Okay, another sector that's really been grappling with this, healthcare. We talked about burnout, moral injury, but what are the numbers actually saying?
pretty alarming, to be honest. One study found almost 20% of healthcare workers have left their jobs since the pandemic started. That's a huge loss of experience skills.
And it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are the people responsible for our health, our well-being.
Right, and when you lose that many people, the system starts to strain. Longer wait times, quality of care, it's a ripple effect.
It's like a perfect storm brewing.
Eh.
Okay, switching gears here. Manufacturing. This one honestly surprised me a little.
Really? How so?
I knew there was a skills gap, an aging workforce, all that, but I didn't realize how much the pandemic sped things up.
It's been a double whammy. You've got people retiring, leaving for other fields, and then you've got this whole other challenge of attracting new talent.
Because the perception of manufacturing jobs, especially among younger folks,
It's not always positive. There's this idea that they're less secure, more physically demanding. And for a generation that's looking for purpose-driven work,
it's a tough sell. Even if the pay is decent, the nature of the work itself.
it's a factor. So manufacturers are going to have to get creative if they want to stay competitive, highlighting the tech advancements, the problem-solving aspects.
Showing that it's not your grandpa's factory job anymore.
Exactly. Okay, but now let's talk about the industry everyone expects to be immune to all of this tech.
Right, with the high salaries, the perks, you'd think they'd be sitting pretty.
Well, the reality is a little more complicated because even in Silicon Valley, things are shifting.
Oh, yeah. So even with all the stock options and ping pong tables, tech workers are jumping ship.
It's not a mass exodus like some other industries, but turnover is definitely up. And the reasons why are pretty telling.
Okay, so what's the deal? Why are techies leaving what look like, on the surface at least, pretty cushy gigs?
Well, the long hours, the pressure cooker environment, even with a big paycheck, that takes a toll. Burnout is real no matter how much money you're making.
Plus, there's a growing awareness of the ethical side of tech, right? Data privacy, AI.
It's not just about building the next cool gadget anymore. People want to know their work has a positive impact, aligns with their values.
You want to feel good about what they do.
Exactly, and if they don't, well, even a hefty salary might not be enough to keep them from looking elsewhere.
So it's a wake-up call for those tech giants. They can't just assume money talks.
Right, they got to step up their game if they want to keep the best and the brightest. Okay, so we've covered who's leaving and why. But the big question is, what does this all mean? For you, the listener, trying to navigate this crazy new world of work. We'll dive into that next.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. From burnt-out baristas to, I don't know, ethically conflicted coders.
It's been quite the journey.
It really has. But the big question is, where do we go from here? What does all this mean for you, listening right now, trying to make sense of your own career in this crazy new world of work?
Well, the good news is this whole Great Resignation thing, it's really shaken things up. And in a lot of ways, that's good for employees. It's a job seekers market out there.
So what's your advice for folks who are actively looking for a new job right now?
Don't settle. This is your moment to be picky. Really think about what matters most to you. Is it flexibility, company culture, opportunities for growth? Don't be afraid to hold out for a job that ticks all those boxes.
No more settling for the bare minimum just because a job offer gets dangled in front of you.
Exactly. Know your worth and then add a little extra on top when you're negotiating salary and benefits.
Love that. Be bold.
Exactly. Now, for those who are maybe happy where they are but want to stay ahead of the curve, be proactive.
How do you mean?
Never stop learning. Take some online courses, go to conferences, even just reading industry blogs. The more you know, the more valuable you become.
So it's about future-proofing your skill set.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to talk to your manager about your goals. See if there's room to grow within your current role or explore new opportunities within your company.
Take control of your own career destiny.
Right. Now, on the flip side, for the employers listening,
Yeah, what's the takeaway for them? How do you attract and keep great employees in this environment?
it's time to throw out the old playbook. The days of just offering a slightly bigger paycheck and calling it a day, those are over.
People want more.
Way more. It's about creating a culture of respect, flexibility, and genuine opportunity. Meaningful work, decent benefits, and yes, paying a fair wage. That's table stakes now.
And let's not forget about work-life balance.
Huge. Remote work, hybrid models, flexible schedules, those aren't just buzzwords, they're the future.
Trust your employees to get the job done wherever and whenever works best for them.
Exactly. At the end of the day, your employees are your biggest asset. Invest in them.
Because happy employees are productive employees. It's that simple.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive into the Great Resignation. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
No, but it's an important conversation to have. The world of work is changing, and those who adapt, who are willing to learn and grow.
Those are the ones who'll come out on top.
Hmm.
All right, listeners, now we want to hear from you. What resonated with you today? Head over to our social media, and let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, the future of work is what we make it.